before we even start?
Sure.
Right?
Professor,
Yes, Mail, go ahead.
proposition is the core meaning of a sentence. The idea that is always there. We may have three sentences, but one proposition. For example, John killed Mary. John caused Mary to die, and Mary was killed by John.
Yes. Yes, that's a very good explanation. So it is the core meaning of a sentence, and it can be one proposition can be expressed through different sentences. So it is the information presented by a given sentence apart from the way it is presented. So when you read the sentence, it is the information that you get from the sentence, meaning that you get from it. It consists of a predicate and various noun phrases or referring expressions. We have seen it before to some extent. We're going to see it now, especially when it's to those noun phrases. So can we say that a sentence equals a complete thought?
Yes, please. When we talk about sentences, we talk about complete.
Yes, but can we have complete thoughts without really having sentences? I'm talking semantically, not syntactically speaking. I will give you an example. So we walk in the park. This is a complete thought. Do we agree?
Yes.
And
Yes,
you can see the
Professor.
full stop there.
Yes, Professor.
Yes, so you can see the full stop. Yes, you. So you can see the full stop, and it means it is a sentence, a complete sentence. Then we have our walk in the park. Has the meaning changed?
No.
Semantically speaking. Normally, semantically speaking, we are still talking about when instead of we are saying walk. Here it should be we walk. I'm sorry. So we walked in the, for instance, our walk in the park. So normally the same tense words and small differences in grammatic words and meaning is normally still the same. Semantically and syntactically speaking, normally this is not a sentence. It is clause or phrase.
It's a phrase.
It's phrase, Professor.
It is. And then when we say for us to walk in the park, again, semantically speaking, it is still the same idea, but syntactically speaking, it's not really a complete sentence. So here normally there is some kind of let's say divergence between what we mean by complete thought from let's say a syntactic perspective and from a semantic perspective. So let's just keep this side. Idea is that it's not there is always a clear what we have as a sentence and we can stop it. So all expressions have the same semantic content. So, they all are all have the same proposition as we have. Yes. The difference is grammatic. So can someone explain this? Can someone try to explain this on what I have said? Normally, I think as was explained by Ismail before, we'll have normally one proposition. So one idea that we are talking about. I think he gave the example of someone killing another person. So let's say James killed Annie. So this will be the sentence, James killed Annie. This sentence, I have said it twice. I have said James killed Annie, then I have said it again. So it is the same idea. It can be expressed by one type of sentences. Sentence can be more once. And that's when we're about utterances, which the act of saying, or reading sentence or saying, expressing by words. So this is the concern of semantics. This is the idea. Sentences normally express propositions and utterances are the physical use of sentences in language. Possible? Yes.
We can say that proposition is
Yes.
proposition is expressed with the different senses. One proposition we can express
Yes, one
it
proposition
in
can
different
express.
different
Yes,
sentences.
using different sentences. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, Professor.
We have the dream skill Annie. We can say so this sentence will be what maybe different way of saying. So and even if it's part like the example of this our walk in the park. So in our walk in the park was not a sentence, was a part of the sentence, but it can be so and it can also carry a following proposition. So that's what we have just.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
So what do you mean by focus and on inflection? Yes, for those who have read the chapter. Yes. Focus and inflection. What do you mean by these two?
Professor,
Yes, Tima?
I lost you a while. Can you please repeat the first before that?
What did you say?
I lost you a
I
while.
couldn't really hear you.
I lost you a while. I have some internet connection.
Yes.
Can you repeat?
Repeat specifically. So did you use
Just the last slide before that.
this one?
Yes.
You're talking about this one.
Yes.
Okay, here I will repeat for the last time. As we have said, we have the proposition, which is the core meaning of a sentence. So the core meaning of something that we want to say, it can be expressed in different sentences. It can be expressed in different sentences, and each sentence can be uttered more than once. We have said and we have seen before. It can be the same sentence. For instance, I am writing a text. You will say it again. I will say I am writing a text, and these are utterance. Or it is being written by me. So the sentences, for instance, here, different and the same proposition. Okay. And when we talked about the sentence part, it doesn't really have to be a full sentence, like the example that we have seen before, or walk in the park. So when we talk about inflection, I've said before. So we are still trying to explain the difference between a proposition and a sentence. And mainly the difference is this. In a proposition, we don't really have when we talk about the proposition itself, we don't have to talk about focus or to talk about inflection. As we have said, the same proposition can be expressed in different sentences. For instance, Richard wrote the report. Richard is the one who wrote the report. The report by Richard, and the report is what Richard wrote. And so the only difference between all these sentences is focus. What does that mean? Can someone explain this idea? The only difference is in focus.
Professor,
Yes, go ahead, Khadija.
the focus changes from sentence to sentence. For example, in the second sentence, Richard is the one who wrote the report. The focus here is on Richard. The report was written by Richard. Here, the focus is on the report. The report is what Richard wrote. Here, the focus is on reports, but a different structure.
In a sense, it's in this case, it's always the word written in, and Richard is the one. Let's just compare this one and Richard is the one who wrote both. Here we focus on specifically, and when we say the report is Richard wrote, and here focus clearly on the report. So sometimes these elements are additional. We'll not really find them in the proposition. The proposition sentence will be, if we are going to get only the core meaning, the core meaning is
Richard wrote the report.
Yes, Richard wrote the report. That's the core meaning. Yes, it was expressed in different ways. So in its different expressions, we can sometimes notice what is the main focus of the sentence. Sometimes it is made very clear. But the proposition itself doesn't really care about that. The idea itself is that this person has written that thing. Or in brief, this person has done this. It's not always in this form, as we will see later. We know also that one sentence can have two propositions. Can you give me an example? If we say here, we are just trying to show that. Yes, say here.
Can we say Richard and John wrote the report?
It's still here. It's still one proposition. The proposition is these people wrote the report. So one proposition in this case. As I said, I'm just trying to show that sentences and propositions are not always equal, don't have to be equal. So, Khadija?
We may have one sentence with the two different propositions if we have a literal meaning and an idiomatic meaning.
Yes, maybe that will be a different way of an exception. Yes, it can work in that sense. Yes, Ismail?
When we have lexical ambiguity, in this sense, we have two meanings. For example, chicken is ready to eat. Chicken is ready to eat.
Yeah. So we don't know whether it is ready to be eaten or ready to eat itself. Yes, in that sense, we can have some sort of ambiguity. So the proposition may not be clear yet. Haytham, I think you were raising your hand.
Yes, sir. The same idea. I was about to say the example we saw last week of the pretty tall girl. So it's the same idea when we have a lexical ambiguity.
Yes. But I agree with you to some extent about this. But here we are just saying that one sentence can have two propositions. For instance, if I say, Richard wrote the report and James killed the cat. Here we have a sentence and we have two prepositions, two things that happen. Do you get this point? Or here, for instance, Richard wrote a report and Helen did too. So Helen wrote a report too. So here we have two propositions, two things that happen, two complex situations, complex concepts, as we have said before. Do you get the point? So it is one sentence, so one full stop, but normally two propositions. So here, just again to prove that a sentence doesn't always equal a proposition. Sentences are affected by grammatic modifications that do not change their proposition. Those changes are called inflection, and they include tense, modality, aspect, gender, number, case, person. So normally, these are all elements that affect the sentence, but that don't really show at the level of the proposition. There is one very good example in the book, for instance, and maybe you can see here. For instance, Richard. For instance, here we have is the one. No, let's see a different example. For instance, we'll say, I am happy, and you are happy, and he is happy, and she is happy, and so on. What's the meaning of am? Let's remove I, and let's remove happy, and let's keep am, and is, and are. What do they mean? Independently. So we have I am happy. Let's remove I, and let's remove happy, and leave just am.
It's an auxiliary, meaning it's not standalone.
Yes, normally its meaning would not stand alone. Okay, so that's basically, yeah, it means nothing. It is a grammatical function. That's what we know about it. So normally, in that sentence, what matters is the person who is speaking is happy. So that person and happy are the two important elements to the proposition. The other elements are inflections, are additional grammatical features that don't really matter for the sentence itself. For a proposition, for instance, if I say, Richard wrote a report, or Richard has been writing reports, or let's say Richard could have written a report, for instance. And the proposition will always be the same: Richard and write and report. The other elements, tense, modality, aspects, voice, gender, number, case, person, additional factors. Do you get this point?
Yes, sir.
Professor,
So hopefully, yes, Latifa?
we can say that the focus is obligatory, but the inflection is optional. We can say that?
No, Latifa, in a sense, when it comes to propositions, focus and inflection are both not necessary at all. In both, they are both irrelevant to the proposition. They are important sometimes. For instance, focus is important sometimes. It's important to show focus in some sentences. But most of the time, focus is not really that important. Inflection is extremely important when it comes to sentences. But when it comes to propositions, none of these two elements is important. We don't have to show focus, and we don't have to show inflection when it comes to the proposition itself. We are saying this because in what remains of our analysis, we'll be using the propositions themselves. We will be ignoring every other inflection, and we'll be ignoring focus too, to some extent.
Okay.
So what we okay, so that's why we are trying to be clear about this. So normally in the future, inflections, modality, aspect, force, as we have said, gender, number, case, person. I think you know these elements. So normally the sentence is the proposition plus inflection plus focus. So we have a proposition, we have an idea, then we add inflection, then we add focus, get a sentence. focus there is optional because it is between brackets, as you can see. So focus is optional, but inflection is necessary for us to sentence. So without inflection, we have just the proposition. I hope it's clear. We'll just look at this table. I'm not going to read everything there, but it's just to remind you of what we mean by number, by case, by let's say aspect, tense. So these are what we call inflection. These simple elements are what we call inflection. So we add them. These are not the whole list, just the examples. So this is what we mean by inflection. It includes these elements and more, and they serve grammatical functions, basically. How, if you remember, we have said that part of your analysis of any sentence, you go through the content words, you explain each one of them and what each one would mean. Then you will have to go to these elements and you will have to explain how those elements function in the sentence, the contribution. When you are doing semantic analysis at a certain level in the way that we have seen in the previous chapters. But for this part of the analysis, you will have normally to move to the next step and to see how they function within the sentence, and or how the sentence functions. And in that case, you will have to remove these parts. Now, I think there is nothing to explain in this table. So let's just. You should also know that you will notice in this class that today's class that there is some large disparity between syntactic and semantic analysis. You will find this a bit confusing, especially when you study principles in syntax. So far, take this, let's say, step by step and try to grasp it from the beginning. Because if you get lost here, you will be confused also when it comes to syntax. So try to concentrate here. So the description of a sentence is a syntactic analysis, and the description of proposition is a semantic analysis. I don't need anything to explain here. So sentences are the concern of syntax, and propositions are the concern of semantics. In syntactic analysis, we see sentences in this form. Let's say, briefly speaking, so normally we see the subject and the predicate, which are necessary elements when it comes to syntax. So for a sentence to be a sentence, it should have a subject and it should have a predicate. Then it should have a count or an object, indirect object and direct object, depending on the verb itself. What you should notice here is that the predicate is always a verb. Okay. To be clear on this from now, let's say here the predicate. Let's say in a sense it is the most important element here. It is the verb. But syntactically speaking, when I say I am thirsty, what are the words that are important for the proposition?
I am thirsty.
I am thirsty, yes. In this case, the predicate, normally the most essential element, is not really. Predicate is, in a sense, if we think about it, it's the main claim of a sentence for semantics, for syntax, and the main claim of a proposition. So in this case, the main claim is based on these two elements. The main thing in the sentence is thirsty, and who is the person who is thirsty? It's me. So I, and that's it. So I and thirsty are the most important element. This, for instance, Mr. Whipple is a banker, so it is banker and Mr. Whipple. Is just a secondary thing here, semantically speaking. Okay, so I just want you to understand this so that you won't be confused in the future. The predicate here in syntax will always be the verb. So when you go back to syntax, keep that in mind. But in semantics, we'll start seeing things a bit differently. So as we have said, we should normally, the first step is separating inflection from the proposition. Just to give you examples, for instance, Albert sends his friends emails or an email or something like that. Here normally, that verb is added in the present. And normally when we talk about the proposition itself, we don't care whether it is in the present or in the past, like in this one. Normally, to write the proposition as it is, or as it should normally look, based on the essential element, it should be something like that. We have Albert, and send, and Albert's friend, and email. So that's what matters. We don't care about numbers. So we will not say an email or emails. And we don't care about the tense in which this sentence was produced. So these are the important elements in this, the important elements of the proposition. Okay? Okay, so if you have any question, if something confusing, it would be a good thing to ask here before we move on. Okay? Every sentence has a predicate and a very number of referring expressions or noun phrases called arguments. So you know that. So we have the predicate or the main claim and a number of referring expressions or noun phrases or arguments. So we will call them arguments in what remains of this chapter. So every sentence, let's call it a proposition, will have predicates, a main event, and arguments. Let's say elements to which the event happened. Let's accept this for now. The predicate may be a verb, an adjective, a preposition, or a noun phrase. Here, we became different from syntax. So when we said that predicates may be a verb, an adjective, a preposition, or a phrase, here we are completely different from syntax. So keep that in mind. Don't take this to syntax, not to be confused. So it will be a verb, an adjective, a preposition, or a noun phrase. And we'll see examples for normally each of these. The arguments that accompany the predicate have different semantic functions or roles in the proposition. So this is basically what this chapter is about, the main element. So we'll have the predicate that normally has let's say representation of the main event or the main description of the specific proposition, and then we have the arguments. The arguments, they call them referring expressions because normally the arguments are, to some extent, there will be a noun phrase or noun phrases that refer to someone in the real world. So it is something that happened to someone most of the time. Okay, we'll see specific examples, and I think it will be clear. But keep in mind that the arguments are normally noun phrases or the subject. Subject is always normally noun phrase. We are not going to be using subject, but at this level, let's call it subject. So the whole chapter is about semantic rules. So these are the semantic rules we are talking about. The meaning of a predicate is determined in part by how many arguments it may have and what role those arguments have. Let's see. Example. We have a window broke, a roof broke, and a plate broke. Based on the definition that you can see there, how would you explain these three? Let's call them sentences, let's call them propositions. So here, which one is the argument and which one is the predicate?
Professor,
Yes?
the verb is the predicate, and the noun phrase
Yes, the verb is the predicate.
is an argument.
Is an argument, yes. So that's what we have here. So the noun phrase is the argument, and the verb is the predicate. So that's completely correct. And what they said here is that the meaning of the predicate is determined in part by how many arguments it may have, and all these arguments have. So when we say broke, normally, if you think about it in general, it means one thing. But if you think about it in this sense, when we say a window broke, that action of breaking means something different. So the breaking of glass. When we say a rope broke, I think you will notice that breaking in this proposition means something different. It's almost cut, not broken. And when we say a plate broke, that's something else. And maybe even if we say someone's heart was broken or something like that, it means something completely different. So it is the same word, but its meaning is partially decided by the arguments it goes with. Hope you get this point. So that's what we meant by the previous argument. Syntactically, they are subjects, and semantically, they are the affected entity, if that makes sense to you. So semantically speaking, when we talk about those bold type arguments, like a window, a rope, and a plate, syntactically speaking, they are the subjects of the sentence. But semantically, they the elements affected by the main event, which is breaking. So the window is the one that was broken, so it is affected by the breaking. The same thing for the rope, and the same thing for the plate. Does this make sense to you? The meaning of the word affected in this sense, in semantics.
Yes, sir.
Is it clear?
Yes, sir. It's clear.
Yes. Thank you. So this is the affected. I'm trying to move a bit slow, be a bit slow here, just to make sure you understand the first elements. If you get them, I think it will be easier for you to understand everything that's followed. So if you get how we begin, to assign these, let's say, adjectives, then it will be very easy for you to understand the rest. So they are changed and affected by the action of the verb. That's why they will be called affected. As simple as that. So they are the ones affected by the action of the verb. Tom broke a window, and James broke a rope, and Harry broke it. What can you say? How are these ones different from the other ones?
Professor?
Speaking, how would you describe the window from the perspective of syntax? Yes, Latifa?
In the first example, the noun phrase is a subject, but here Tom broke a window is the object
yes.
of the
So
sentence.
this time it is the object of the sentence. Yes. And the same thing for the rope, and the same thing for the plate. So syntactically speaking, they are serving completely different function. But from the perspective of semantics,
Professor?
what do you think?
The same thing. Semantically, the same thing.
Oh, yes. Yes, still affected by. They are still affected. Yes, here.
Semantically speaking, we can say that the focus has changed.
Yes, I would say that that's part maybe of seeing them as sentences. So syntactically speaking, semantically speaking is here. Normally, focus doesn't matter, as we have said. When it comes to semantics, we don't really concentrate on focus, and we don't really concentrate, at least at this level, on inflection. So let's just concentrate on the argument and the predicate. The argument in this case, we have Tom, and we have window, but we are still talking about window. Tom is the one who broke the window, so the window is still the one affected by the action of breaking, or the action of Tom in this case. and the same thing for the rope and the plate. So they are still affected by the action. Syntactically, they are objects, and semantically, they are still the affected. So nothing has changed from the perspective of semantics. Whether we write the sentence in this way or the other way, it's still the same proposition, and the window is still affected by the action of breaking. Okay? Tom, James, and Harry have the role of agents. Agents because they have performed an action, but specifically because they have performed an action that affects someone else. Please keep this in mind, take notes or whatever you are doing now, but keep this in mind. We call it an agent only when it affects someone else. So Tom has affected the window. So the window will be called affected because it was affected, as we have just said. And Tom is the agent. He's the one who did something to someone. Okay? The agent is who or what instigates action of the verb and affects the other entities. So this is the agent, and these are the affected. Okay? I hope you understand the difference. Can someone give me an example, just to make sure we are on the same page? Someone to give me an example in which we have an agent and then we have an affected.
Professor?
Yes, go ahead, Sliman.
Sorry, Professor.
Hussam, go ahead. Yes, Sliman. Who's that?
I is the agent.
Yes, Sliman, go ahead.
I kick the ball. I is the agent because
yes,
I is the pronoun who has performed the action, and
yes.
the ball is the affected because it is the object that receives the action of the agent.
Yes. If this sentence becomes the ball was kicked by me,
it will still
where
the
is
same.
The agent and where is the affected?
It will still the same. Even we change the order of the words.
Yes, thank you, Sliman. So I think the yes, go ahead.
I cooked the chicken.
Yes.
I is the agent, and chicken is the affected entity.
Yes, and the chicken is the affected entity. Yes. So thank you. So I think the idea is clear so far. So now we will talk about the idea of valency, and there will be different types and levels of valency. So valency theory is description of the semantic potential of predicates in terms of the number and types of arguments which may occur with them. So as we have said, the predicate can be explained as the main claim. So it is potential of claims. So certain claims normally impose certain number and type of arguments, make them occur with them in a sense. We'll see how. Number of arguments that a predicate has is its valency. So that's what we mean by valency, as simple as that. Valency is the number of arguments. So if it has no arguments, it's valency 0. If it has one argument, valency 1. If it has 7 arguments, it's valency 7. So that's what we mean by that. When we say it is snowing, what can you say about this one? So normally we have the main claim, the main thing that happens, and we have the one who did the action, syntactically speaking. But semantically speaking, what do we have here? Can you describe it?
Yes.
Yes, Sliman?
Yeah, yes. Here we have zero valency because the pronoun it doesn't refer to anything in the real world.
Yes. So yes. So that's normally the answer. So valency 0. Khadija, did you want to say something? No?
No, Professor, it's exactly the same thing because it refers to, it does not refer to something concrete in the real world.
Ah, yes. So in this case, we have valency 0 because our arguments are normally there is no real argument in this sentence. So what there is no. Uh, I don't know if we can say the same thing in Moroccan Arabic. Not Moroccan Arabic, I think, in Standard Arabic. I think we can say the same thing. We'll say in answer, I think we don't really refer to anything. We don't refer to cloud, don't refer to the sky. We just say it for the same purpose because sentences would normally need subjects, and that's why we have it here. So syntactically speaking, we need to have a subject, and that's why we had to throw that pronoun there. While semantically speaking, it doesn't mean anything. So here we talk about valency of 0. My brother snores. Here, snores or laughs or cries normally are words that, or claims or predicates only necessitate one argument, so they are called valency of 1. And I think the idea is clear now. Chris is making an omelette, so here we have. Yes?
We, Professor, we have two arguments.
Yes? We have 2 arguments, and this is valency of 2, yes. And Agnes is writing her mother a letter in this case. We can even talk about valency of 3, but chapter does not really cover that, so I will not really disturb you with that, with the idea of valency of 3. And I think writing is not the best example. I think normally the best example is, for instance, a give. I think we'll see it later briefly, but normally here we don't really have to. But the idea is when we have give, normally that necessitates 3 arguments. Someone to give something to someone else. So normally 3
Professor,
arguments. So it is called balance.
Professor,
Yes.
Professor,
case of
Yes.
the transitive verb. Is it?
Yes. So yes, yes, that's the idea. We'll talk about that transitive word. Yes, Toby.
yes, can we say that it doesn't refer to any argument?
Yes, in the first example, yes, it doesn't refer to any argument. It doesn't have any specific argument. So normally it doesn't really function as an argument because it doesn't refer to anything. And we have said that arguments are referring expressions, but it is some sort of an empty referring expression. So it is not an argument. That's why we say valence 0, as if it does not really exist from the perspective of semantics. Some predicates break have a variable valency. So sometimes it is clear that some words, for instance, as we have said, like snores and laughs, have a valency of 1. We said verbs like make normally have valency of 2. Someone has to make something. And then words like give, we said is valency of 3 for that transitive. So they should have the one performing the action, and the thing that is, for instance, given. So the one who gives, the thing that is given, and the person who receives that thing. But sometimes some words have some kind of variable valency. So it's not really the word itself that decides. A window broke. Here it seems like break has normally only one valency of 1. But Tom broke a window, and here it's the same predicate, but it has valency of 2. So these are normally the basic notions that will help us understand what comes next in this chapter. So we start with valency 0 again. So it is same example that I've seen before. It is snowing. This subject does not correspond to anything in the underlying propositions. I've said that before. sentence has a subject because English requires a subject. We have said before too. Zero arguments verbs are normally whether verbs. With exceptions, when sometimes we say seems, that it seems there again doesn't really refer to anything. For instance, when we say assuming that you are this and that, so it's there also basically serves the same function. So the argument verbs like whether verb basically. Here we have said verbs, and we can have verbs and we can have what? On the other hand, let's see
Nouns.
how that goes.
Adjective.
Adjectives specifically, yes. So we'll have verbs and we'll have adjectives. So here, when we say it is raining, so something is happening. If you think about it from a semantic, the perspective of semantics, something is here. So it is raining. Okay. It sleeted yesterday. So its tense differs from one situation to the other. Sleet normally is that rain that comes with ice sometimes. It's being thundering. So we can add additional elements there which are optional. But the main proposition is this. It and thunder and it and sleet. But as you will see that it has been, they are all serve grammatical functions. They don't really mean anything. So thundering and sleeted and raining are the main events. And here, because we have verbs, we are talking about events. Tense and aspects must be expressed, and indications of time and place can be added. So normally, but as a sentence. So tense and aspect must be expressed. So that's why we mean it's raining. So now it is raining, or it has been thundering, maybe repeatedly, or it's sleeted in the past. So we should express these, but they in the West or as even are optional. They can be added, and they maybe don't have to add them. So here, when we are talking about events, but when we have whether adjectives, can someone give me an example? The main predicate will be an adjective. Yes, it is snowy, it is rainy, it is windy, as well as we can see here. So here, as I said, that's where we differ from syntax. Normally in syntax, the main predicate will always be the verb to be. But here, the main verb. But in this case, it is the adjective. The position of these two types of sentences can be described as follows. So the first one, as we have said, is an event. The second one is it is a condition. So we are basically describing a condition. In the first one, we say for example, it is snowing. So this is what is happened. This is the event. But here we are describing a condition, and then we say it is windy. Do you get the point? Get the
Yes, Professor.
Thank you. So normally when it comes to valency zero, we have two probabilities. We do with weather events and weather conditions, and we said that weather events will be expressed by predicates, which are verbs. Weather conditions will be expressed by predicates, which are adjectives. For valency of 1, like my brother snores. Here we are talking about intransitive verbs, which have a subject, no object. So we have used the example of snores and laughs and cries. They are one argument predicates. So we call them intransitive verbs or one argument predicates. So they have one argument, which is subject, syntactically speaking. The dog is sleeping. One more thing, I will have to take you back to the previous slide for one more remark, just to be clear. If you remember, when we talked about the previous example, we used to say affected and we used to say agent. In this case, why we haven't anything affected or agent or anything?
Professor,
Yes?
maybe because it here refers to anything in the real world.
Yes, in a sense, that's it. Because we have a zero argument. Yes, Sliman?
Because there the agent, which is does not affect anything, but we have just description of the situation. So we don't have the an affection situation here.
Yes, normally, so no one is affecting anyone else in this sense. So the idea is that those descriptions go with the arguments. In this case, don't really have an argument. There is no argument. And as there is no arguments, we cannot add those distinct, those adjectives that we used to add before. Okay? So over here, so one argument predicates are predicates that will have one argument. So that argument will have only one function, if you think about it. And remember, as I said before, we talk about an agent only in cases in which it can affect someone else. For instance, in this case, we say my brother snores. It affects anyone.
Professor.
Does
No,
my
sir.
brother affect him?
No, Professor.
No, normally. So keep that in mind. So brother, in this case, is not an agent. He will be described as an agent only if he is affecting someone else. Here the dog is sleeping. What do you think? Is it an agent?
No.
No, Professor.
No, normally it's still not an agent. Yes. Larry laughs the same thing. And the Earth rotates on its axis. So on its axis is, let's say, between brackets, it is optional. What about the last one? The Earth rotates. In these cases, all these cases, so these, how can you describe it? This one we have no agent, but we have one argument. How do you think we can describe this argument, in your opinion?
It affects itself or himself.
Affects itself.
Professor?
Yes, it affects itself. Yes. What do you think?
It performs something,
Right?
but affected nothing.
Yes, so they perform some action without affecting anyone. Now, these predicates expressed performed by actors. So here we talk about action and actor. So they perform a action, and they are actors, not agents, because they just perform the action. That's really how it goes. This is how we will start describing types of positions or sentences. So if you have a sentence that has an argument that performs an action without affecting anyone else, the one that performs action is the actor, and the predicate is called the action itself. Okay? Present the composition of these propositions, we can abbreviate arguments. For instance, if we say dog or the earth, we'll just say dog and earth. In this case, the sentence starts, the dog is sleeping. Remember that. We have removed there, we have removed is, and have removed ing because it's really related to the proposition. We have dog and sleep. Dog as the first argument, the actor, and sleep as the main action. They have the same thing and it's the same thing. We don't care about inflection, we don't care about aspects, we don't care about anything. That's the proposition. Okay? So we'll see. Yeah. Is it clear? If it's not clear, we can explain it as long as we are still here. If you are confused, please ask now. No?
Clear, Professor.
Yes, thank you very much. Now see here, grandfather died. Last week. How would you describe it? Do you think these are actions and actors? Actors and actions?
So,
No, Professor.
Yes. Why?
an action.
Why? Yes.
Because it does not affect anyone else. So it's not an agent but an actor.
Yes, but is it the actor in this case? When we say right, do anything.
No.
It isn't.
No.
In this case, we have a
We can
different
say
meaning.
that
Yes.
it's an actor if we commit suicide.
Yes, for instance, if it is committed suicide, we can say that yes. But in case he died, he didn't do anything. We see another example for us who say a volcano. Normally, it may confuse an example, so maybe move this one. It will be clear. Fell. So normally, I think the example of the cake is the best example. When we say cake, cake cannot really perform actions. If something doesn't move, it is not something that is alive. It is inanimate. So in this case, it cannot really perform any sort of action. So, in this case, it did not perform the action. So what happened normally? What affected the action? Makes sense. So these predicates express events or changes in the conditions of entities named by the argument. These entities are affected by the event. So death is an event, fall is an event, and the eruption of a volcano is an event. So these are events that happened to those entities, to the subjects. When you die, you don't really do anything. You are affected by death. So the event of death is you. So in this case, they are the main predicate is an event, and the main subject is affected by the event. Okay? And it will be described like this. So grandfather and die. He was affected by the event. Cake
Professor.
and fall. So the event happened to the cake. Yes, Sam?
Can we say that abstract nouns cannot affect anything?
Abstract nouns cannot affect anything.
Yes.
I think it depends. I can think of examples in fictitious situations. Maybe we can still have abstract nouns. That this idea killed him. The idea abstract, but it normally did something in this case. In this sentence,
It can be an
it was this
agent.
idea that killed him. Yes, as I have said, maybe in this example, it will not be a real, it can be a metaphorical expression, but semantically speaking, we take it as it is. We say the idea killed him, or that dream killed him. That say. I think with when some we can even say that the surprise killed him. So in this case, we'll describe it as it is. So the surprise is the one that performed the action. So semantics in this sentence will be described as it is. Pragmatically speaking, you will give me different explanation. But when it comes to semantics, you will take the proposition as it is and describe it as it is. Do you get the point, Hussein?
Yes,
So I
Professor.
cannot
Thank
really
you.
judge. We cannot really say. So I will go back here. Just try to review what we have seen here before we move on. Can someone summarize what I've said here? So we have two types of sentences. Go briefly and tell me this is how we deal with this one and why, and this is how we deal with the other one, and this is why. Look at the examples. Look at it's there in blue how we should explain them. So just read what you have in front of you. No. So maybe it's not there. So do you have questions? What is the part explain or to understand?
Could you repeat the question, Professor?
My question was to summarize what we have on this slide, just to make sure you understand, just to make sure you are following. So, for instance, give me go to one sentence of those sentences that we have, and explain how we will represent its silencing, and tell me why. Then do the same thing for these sentences, and tell me why they are different from those on top.
Professor?
That's the question. Yes, Sliman?
Can I try?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so far we have seen two types of sentences. The first one, two types of sentences that have that stretches under the valency one. So the first type is when we have the argument performs an action. So we call it an actor. Not performs an action. It does not affect anyone. The dog is sleeping. Here the dog does not doing the action, but it performs the action. It is not affected, I mean.
Yes.
And
yes, it doesn't affect anyone else. Yes.
Yeah. The second one, the argument we have, it is affected in a way or another. It is affected, but it does not perform any action. For example, grandfather died. So the grandfather here does not perform an action, but it is an event. This predicate expression event.
Yes. Thank you very much. So it is affected by the event and not performing the action. Yes. Thank you very much, Sliman. So I think that yes, Safa. I'm sorry.
Can I try? In intransitive verbs,
Go ahead.
in a transitive verb, we don't have an agent and affected because there is just an actors who perform an action. The second one, like grandfather died, here the subject is not affected anyone or something, but actually he is affected by an event.
Yes, that's correct, Safa. Thank you very much. That's also very correct.
Professor, when we say that the earth rotated on its axis, it is here earth is affected axis. I mean, it is an agent, and then is and axis is an affected.
Can you repeat the example when we say what? What did you say, Safa? When we say?
She said, Professor,
Okay,
she said the Earth rotates in her axis, in its axis.
Yes. What about it? It's still action and actor action, Because it does something. So normally in this case, it does something, so it is an action, and it performs a specific action. Okay, so here we cannot really talk about an event.
So access here is not affected by the Earth?
No, as we said here, on its axis is basically, let's say, as if we are saying, I go in circles around my center. Let's explain it in this way. So we don't really affect the center, but we are just saying that I go in circles around it. Okay, so the center is not, the center or the axis is not really affected, but by what I am doing. Okay, I'm just telling you this is where I perform my general action. Yes.
Okay, Professor.
Yes, here.
Professor,
Yes.
what if we said the dog tried sleeping? Like he tried sleeping.
The dog
The dog tried sleeping. Is it going to be
tried
still-
sleeping.
Yeah.
Yes, it will be still the same argument. Here we will have some changes in modality. For instance, like when we say can't sleep or can sleep or could have slept. So there will be changes, as we have said, in modality and aspect in other elements, but the main proposition will be still the same: dog and sleep. That's what matters. Okay. The other elements are extra elements. They can and they should be removed. Okay. So let's practice here. Can someone answer the first one? My head aches.
So
Mister?
Yes. Yes.
it is the
Starting
first
with
one.
you. Yes.
The first one has the relationship of affected and event, because you can't control when your head aches and when it doesn't.
Yes. Thank you very much. So the first is clear. My head aches. If you think about it, let's say the head is not performing the action of aching. It is subject to the event of aching. It is suffering pain. So it is affected by the event which is aching. Okay. And the second one, all animals breathe.
Professor?
Yes, Latifa?
Here we have actor and action, because the action of breathing is done by all animals.
Yes. So normally here it is an action performed by an actor. Yes, it is clear. Thank you. So let's move to the next one. Dennis is always complaining.
Professor?
Yes, Khadija, Estelle?
Professor?
Dennis is always complaining. Here we have the relation actor action. Dennis is the actor and is complaining is the action.
Yes, so complain is the action. Yes. Thank you very much. Yes, someone was trying to say something. Is it about this one or the next one? Yes, here? You raised your hand? No?
Yeah, I was just trying to answer, Professor.
Okay, yes, thank you. So for this one, Iman Farhi, do you have a different answer? Answer for the next one?
Is it me, sir?
No? Yes, Iman Farhi, you have raised your hand.
Yes. Fanny fated, we have affected an event.
So we have affected and we have event, yes, because she was probably affected by that. Benton, yes, thank you very much. The next one, the pond rose. Item?
Professor, it's the same thing. We have the relation of affected plus event.
Yes, so it was affected by that reason. Yes, thank you very much. The woman frowned. Hussam?
Professor?
Yes?
It's an actor-action situation. We have the
Yes, it is
woman,
an
which
actor
is the
action,
actor.
yes.
Yes. And
Yes.
frown, which is the action. Yeah.
Yes, and frowned is the action, yes, thank you very much. And we have they gossip a lot.
Professor.
Professor?
Professor?
Is an
Yes.
actors.
Yes, we have Professor Actor and
I will give you the next question. We have Asiya now. Yes, Asiya.
an actor in action. They gossip. Gossip is the action. The actor
Yes.
is the.
Yes. The actor is there. Yes. Thank you very much. Safa, do you want to answer the next one? You've been raising your hand. No. Maybe it's one. Okay, let's go for Ikram.
Arnold hurried. It's actor action structure.
Yes, it is actor action structure, as you have said. So it is Arnold who performed this specific action. Yes. The next one. Let's see.
Sir?
Hussam. Yes,
It's
we'll
an
come back to you.
affected events, I guess.
The lock has it. So rust normally happens to locks. So yes, it is affected an event. And the last one, you were snoring. Iman, yes.
I think actor action.
Yes, it is an action and an actor. Yes. So you and snore. So you did that without affecting anyone. Okay. So thank you very much. I think it's clear so far. So let's move to the next step. I think if we get the gist of it, the rest will be relatively very easy. So I will just give you. It's not me. It's the chapter. We'll just give let's say different relations and different names for each type of relation. Predicates do not have to be verbs all the time. We have seen that before. The soup is cold. What do you think about this one? Just try to guess. How would you describe this relation? So where is the argument? Where is the predicate first? Then how would you describe that relationship?
Professor?
Yes.
The soup is the argument, is the predicate, and I think the relationship is that of an event and its affected one.
But is there an event? Does something happen here? Can we talk about an event? Can we talk about an action? Ikram?
No.
I think is an auxiliary. It's not a verb. So it can be a predicate without being a verb. It can be an auxiliary.
But as I said, that's the kind of syntax. In semantics, it will even matter. Here, that is will be just ignored when it comes to semantics. Yes, Liman?
Here the argument is the soup and is the predicate. So we don't have any action here. We have a situation called is an explanation of the situation of soup. So I think in accordance to the book, so here we have associate relationship between the argument and the predicate.
Yes, there is some sort of association, and because if it is an adjective, yes, it can.
It can be a state rather than a verb, an action rather than an action.
Yes,
it can be a state.
Yes, it is more of a state. Yes, that's correct. So we can talk about state, and we can talk about a description. I think more specifically. So the bottle is empty. Jerry is impatient. So normally we know what adjectives do. adjectives basically describe nouns. Henrietta was rather reckless. So this group of predicates are adjectives, adjective phrases, which describe the entities named by their subjects. This is what adjectives do. They describe nouns. So cold and empty and impatient and reckless are descriptions of the arguments. So this is what happens here. We have a noun, an argument, and we have its description. That's the main thing that happens in the sentence. That's the predicate. The description here is the predicate when it comes to meaning. Okay, if you think about it, unlike syntax, the verb to be is not really important there. Soup and cold. If you hear these two words, you will understand. Soup, cold. You will understand that the soup is cold. You don't really need any other element. So language can do, in a sense, language can do without these elements. The subject of each sentence is simply the topic or the theme. So because there is no action, we cannot talk about an action, we cannot talk about an actor, we cannot talk about affected or agent. So we'll call it just a theme or topic, so we'll call it a theme. So this is the term that will be used for most of the cases that we will see in the future. But so theme and its description. So we have a theme, this is what we are talking about. This is our theme, and this is how it is described. As Sliman said, there is some kind of association between the two, and I think we'll see that later. But so far, this is what we have. We have the theme, and we have its description. Okay? So when the predicate is an adjective, this is how it should be analyzed. I hope it's clear. If you have questions about this, please give me your questions now. Okay, so we'll move to a similar situation. It is similar, but it is not the same. In this case, a verb expression occurring for is one argument predicate. Similar to what we see. So it is and for. So we have verb to be and we have adjective. But in this case, what do we have? What do we have here? We have this man, it is
Professor.
Noun phrase. Latifa?
We can say here that the predicate gives us information about subject, which is this man.
Yeah. Yeah, normally that's what happens, yes. So the predicate gives us information about the subject. They're both nouns, carpenter and man. Here we're talking about adjectives in this case. So this man is a carpenter. Dextrose and fructose are sugars. So here in this case, what happened here? Somehow, in this case, I think that's the clearest example. Some have given some sort of definition. So these two can be defined as sugars. Okay. In the statement, provide identity for the named entity or T. So it provides its identity, some sort of defining it, telling you this the identity of what we are talking. So in this case, we have T and identity. This man, his identity is dextrose and fructose, identity or definition, sugars. Okay. Extine, village idiot, for instance, village idiot, and Cora and Willis are the class leaders. Okay. So can someone, again, briefly explain the difference between theme identity and theme description? It's just one sentence. Just tell me what is the difference between the two. How do they work?
So
Description, identity. Yes, yes, yes.
In the theme description relationship, the description can change. For example, the soup is hot. After a while, the soup will become cold. The identity is something that is more uh, it is something that is more concrete in the theme. It's part of it. It cannot easily change.
That's of it here. But think about it. We can say that this man is a butcher, and we say that this man is a teacher. So it's not really stable. So the difference between a butcher and coal, it's the difference between a carpenter, for instance, and hot. Grammatically speaking.
Could you repeat the question?
When we have nouns, yes, as I said, in terms of grammatic function, when we have adjectives, we talk about description. Adjectives normally describe nouns, so they will describe the arguments. That's what we have here. So these ones are adjectives, and they describe nouns. So when we have adjectives and description, because they are adjectives, they describe. So we have theme description. But we have nouns. Normally, the relationship is this identity. So this man is a carpenter, sugar, which idiot, and so on. To some extent, we will see that some sentences are equational propositions, and identity can be reversed, created that differ in focus. For instance, here, Eddie Extend is idiot. Or, the other hand, we can say the village idiot is Eddie Extend. And those are the class leaders are Karen Willis. So one more thing to keep in mind. I have an idea of adjective and noun, maybe to make things a bit simple. So usually this is how it happens. But as you will see here, the difference between the structure, theme description, and theme identity is not always clear. Like in this one, for instance, when we talk about Russian. Boris is Russian, and Boris is. Here, it's really difficult to decide whether we have a relationship theme expression or theme. So normally in the day exam, you will be given per example. And as I have to keep in mind this notion of adjectives and nouns. Adjectives normally describe the argument, while nouns will provide some sort of identity. Is it clear so far?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
sir. So I think we are done with valency 1 or one argument predicates. So now we will move to valency 2.
Professor?
And here we will go back to the old discussion of yes, Slim.
Can you go back, please, to the previous slide?
Previous one?
The previous, the previous one.
So that this one.
Yeah, here is titled one argument predicate, but it's a bit confusing for me. For example, here we have, for example, Boris is a Russian. We have two arguments: Russian, which is a noun phrase or a noun, and Boris. We have two arguments, right?
No, that's the idea. But where is the predicate in your opinion, Sliman? Do you think it's the verb to be? That's no,
yes.
That's because you are affected by. I have tried to say this before. Don't be affected by syntax when doing this semantic analysis. Normally, it is here. It's set to are. It is similar to has been. It is similar to syntactic element that doesn't really matter in this situation. So let's not talk about the examples in which we have Boris is Russian, because that's a confusing example. Let's talk about this man is a carpenter. It is similar. But the main things that we have in this sentence are man and carpenter. Okay? So This man is a carpenter. This man is the main argument, and carpenter is the predicate. We have said in semantics, the predicate can be a verb, a noun, an adjective, or anything. Okay, that's why we have it as here, as we have it here. So the man is the argument, and predicate is carpenter, sugar, village idiot, class leader, or Russian, like in the last example. That is there doesn't really matter. Do you get the point? So if you think about it, don't read it as a sentence. Try to think about it as an idea. We have man and we have carpenter. No matter how we link them, this is what you will get. We have cold. No matter how you link, you get the same proposition and the same idea. Okay?
Yeah, it's clear. Thank you.
Yeah. So for 52, as I said, we will go back to the discussion of agent or actor. We have discussed before, so normally it should be clear to deal with. Most verbs take subject and an object. They are two arguments. Know that. So this is making an omelette. Is this different from what we have seen before? How are we going to describe these elements? Here we have a very clear, a very unique situation, different thing. So how is this different from what we have seen before? Chris is making an omelette. Let's say the sentence is Chris is let's say throwing rocks. Let's say the sentence is Chris is throwing rocks. How would you describe it?
Professor?
Yes?
Here we have the agent, which is Chris, and the affected entity, which is an omelette. We have two arguments.
So you are talking about this sentence?
Yes.
No, but let's think about it. When we talk about the verb making, he is still making it. Can you affect something that's not there? Can you affect something that does not exist? The action itself, making, is creating the omelette in this case. So when we talk about it in this way, he is not really affecting it, he is creating it. Maybe for the first time. There was no omelette before. If you get my point. We'll see further explanation, but I just wanted you to look at it just as in a sentence and think about it. He is making an omelette, so there was no omelette before that, and he is causing it to exist. Do you still hear me?
I can hear you, Professor.
Very low, Professor.
Yeah, thank you. A statement with make must contain a mention of who makes and what is made, and likewise with need and use. So normally here we are talking just about an argument. So we say make, someone is making something. Someone needs something, someone is using something. So just wanted you to think about the idea of making. Some sentences express some action by one entity which affects another entity. The cat killed the rat. We have seen that before. So how would you describe this one? The cat killed the rat.
Professor, the cat is agent and the rat is affected.
The cat is agent and the rat is affected, yes, by the action. Yes, that's correct. I will. It's the same thing. Bert hit Harry. It's the same thing. The first argument denotes an agent, and the second argument names and the entity affected. So that's what I've seen before. An agent, we'll explain them again. is involved in an action that has some effect on another entity. An actor, on the other hand, is involved in some action, like running, that has no necessary effects on others. As we have said, the cat agent kill a rat affected. We have seen that before, so I think no need to explain it again here. Now we'll go to the example of the omelette again. In some sentences, action does not affect an existing entity. It contributes to its creation, like the cat dug a hole. So digging a hole, if you think about it, digging a hole doesn't really affect the hole because it did not exist. You are still creating that hole. So now we have a different relationship. I think I thought we were going to talk about it in the previous slide, but it is making an omelette, so the same sentence, the same thing that I've said before. Picasso created a masterpiece. So that masterpiece, for instance, did not exist before he created it. So this action cannot say that it is affecting the masterpiece itself. The whole omelette and the masterpiece are the result or effect of the action. So in this case, they are the effect of the action, or the result of the action. They come into existence because of the action. So we call them. So the one who performs the action is, in this case, is called the agent. And we still have an action. The predicate is the action. And we will not call it the affected. We will call it the effect. Okay? Is this clear? Do you have questions?
Professor, could you go back to the previous one? I just wanted to screen it.
Professor?
This one?
Yes.
Yes, Haytham.
Professor, for example, if we have a sentence, for example, Tom is damaging the car, or Tom is breaking the window. So what kind of relationship we have here?
The window will not create this. We had the example, say break the window, it is not affecting the window. It existed and we're affecting it. Like killing. When I kill someone, I will cause him to stop to exist. Yet, I'm still affecting something that existed. So he is affected by action. Okay? But this situation of creating something is exceptional. We cannot say that affecting things exists. So this action is not affected, it's creating nothing. So it is the action of creating it. That's why we call it effect. So it is the effect of this action. Okay?
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah. Now we'll have to move to and yes, it's here.
Is the tense of the verb, can it affect the relationship? For example, the examples, Chris is making an omelette and Chris made an omelette. Can we say that the first one, Chris is making an omelette, is an actor because the omelette hasn't existed yet. It's still in the process of being produced.
I think I got your point here. So you say it is in the past, he has already created the omelette. But the idea is that when we use the verb in the past, we were talking about when he was in it in the past. So it doesn't change anything. Okay? So it is still the effect of that action in the past.
So in both cases, Chris is still an agent who affected the omelette.
Yes, and the omelette is the effect. Okay? So it wasn't affected by him, it was created by him. It is the effect of his action. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
If we give you another verb and we say, for instance, Chris made an omelette, then he put salt on the omelette. I would say that put salt on the omelette here. The omelette is not is already created. So whatever Chris does to the omelet after that, it's an action and it will be affected by it. But at this level, when the verb refers to the act of creating, that's what we are talking about exactly. So the verb is refers to the creation of the second argument, then an effect. Okay.
Yes.
Here we'll talk about place, and yes, and we'll talk about a different type of relationship. It doesn't have to be an action. It doesn't have to be a description. It doesn't really have to be what we have seen before. As I said, you will have to concentrate because we will see different elements. You will need to go and revise them again later. What matters now is that you will understand, let's say, each one independently. If you understand each one how it works, it will be very easy for you to revise later to try to find connections. And then maybe after a while, you will not even need it by heart. You will just look at the sentence about what it can mean, and you will maybe remember a couple of terms. We will see the terms that we will need to remember by the end. Some cases the act does not affect any entity, and like Jenny crossed the street. They actually affect the street. She crossed the street. Doesn't cross streets not affected in any way. Fiona entered the room. The fact you enter a specific room really affects any way, and that's a new relation. So when you hit someone, you kill someone, you painted something. Yes. So in those cases, we'll talk about direct relationship, direct effect. In this case, there is no. So Simon tree. Climbing it doesn't affect the tree in any way. In this case, we are talking, as you can see in the title, of place. So the action performed by an actor involves movement with respect to a place. So normally entering the room, crossing the street, and climbing a tree are different types of examples. The second argument in each of these sentences simply indicates the place. So the actor crossed a specific place, or entered a specific place, or climbed a specific place. Again. So tree in this case will be just place. Okay? Does it make sense?
Yes. Yes, Professor.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So here when we talk affection, the meaning of the word affection means
Emotions.
Emotion and feel to some extent. So the next group of sentences do not express any action. They tell how one entity affects or bears affect another entity. Let's see. The decision surprised us. Oh, let's remove all. Let's think about it. The decision surprised us. So the decision didn't really do anything. It surprised us. If you think about it. We have another example. Are disturbing everybody. I think this one can be confusing because you would think that maybe disturbing will have direct relationship, direct effect. Let's see the next one. Yes. In this case, impress the audience, or you did not impress the audience. Both the same. We don't care whether it is negative or affirmative. So here we have talked about emotions to some extent. How do you think we should analyze these sentences? The decision surprised us. Did anyone perform a specific action? Can we talk about actor or agent?
No, Professor.
Normally, in the first example, which is, I think, the clearest example, we cannot talk about an actor, we cannot talk about an agent, we cannot talk about a place. So here we'll talk about a different situation. But remember, it is linked to affect to some extent. The first argument names the entity that has an affecting role. So the one who is affecting others, who is causing specific emotions. That's what we mean by first argument. Okay, that's what the first argument does in the sentence. So the decision is the one that has the surprising role, surprising effect. So the is the one affecting, creating the effect. Okay, so it is the one affecting. The predicate expresses an affect. An affect is certain. It's called a feeling. So the predicate is the one that expresses the feeling itself. So again, the first argument, the first argument, I'm sorry, is the one that causes you to feeling, and the predicate is the feeling that we are talking about, the affect itself, and finally, the second is the entity that is affected. So the one who will receive the action of surprise. And the first one, if we look at it, decision called affecting. Surprise we call the predicate, and us the affected. So affecting and affected can be confusing. Look them and keep them in mind. Affecting, the one who affects, and affected, the one who is affected. And the affect is the feeling itself. In this case, it's the same semantics but in reverse. And that can be a bit problematic. So we'll say Oliver was envious Oliver was envious of his brother. So now, which one is affected and which one is affecting?
Sir?
Yes?
Oliver is affected, and his brother is the one who affects Oliver.
See,
the brother
affects to feel that, that form of envy, yes. He's the one who wants him to feel envy. And in the case, Oliver envied his brother. The one? Similar to saying, I was surprised by your decision. So Oliver envied his brother. Will go the same way. And Angie was angry with Algernon again. So all these examples would go in reverse, the opposite of the first one. So the one affected is Angie in this one, and the previous one is Oliver. Anger and envy are the feelings we are talking about, so these are the affects. And the one causing that is Algernon and the brother. Does it make sense? So the first one will be in this form, the decision. Yes, thank you. So the decision surprises us. It has the affecting and surprises the affect, and we are affected. And the second ones, we have just switched affecting and affect, as you can see here. So the affected is Oliver, and the affecting one causes envy is the brother. Okay. So now we'll talk about adjectives. An adjective have an expression indirectly. There must be a preposition between the adjective and the noun phrase. We'll see the example. I am afraid of the dark. I'm afraid of dog. We were not aware of the accident. And aren't you curious about something? Math. So I am afraid of the dog. How would you describe this one? Is there an action? Is there an event?
No, sir.
No, professor.
These also express affect, as we have said. So these express feelings, as we have said, and affected in a subject position. So one affect is in the subject position. I am afraid. I am aware. I'm sorry. For instance, the decision surprised me. We had a verb, so the decision in the subject section is the one affecting. It surprised me. Or the opposite, I envy you. In that case, I am affected. Again here, I am afraid. It means I am the one affected by the feeling. And the one causing the feeling is the dog. If we say we were aware of the accident, not aware, as well as those other elements don't matter. So we are the ones affected by that affect that feeling, and the accident is the one causing it, and so on. So again, affected and affect and affecting. I afraid and I will give me 1 minute. I'm sorry. One. I'm sorry about that. Maybe you have to let that sink in. I think if it is clear, if there are no questions, we can move to the next one.
Clear, Professor.
Thank you. So here we talk relational predicates. So the first one we're about affection to some extent. Here, some kind of let's say different relations. So just in brief, just different relations. So our next sentence is about neither acting nor affecting. The predicate merely acts as a link between one argument, a theme, and another argument, its associate. So the predicate is a linking or relational predicate. So here, there is basically no action. We just say that is some sort of link. The first example will be, Sheila is like her. So nothing happened. There is no feeling. You don't really understand that any other thing besides the fact that there is some kind of link between the two. Maybe she's like her in shape, maybe in way of thinking, or whatever. So we have just established a link between the two. In this case, as nothing happens, as there is no feeling involved to call it affecting or affected, and there is no action to call it an agent or an actor, we'll have to be left with theme again. Like what we had with adjectives and nouns, if you remember, when we talked about description and when we talk about identity. So in those cases, we talk about theme, yes? So in those cases, we talked about theme, and here again, we'll talk about theme because nothing happens. So Sheila, in this case, is the theme, as you can see, and like in that case is linking or relational predicate, and mother is the other element that is associated with our theme. So we have associated with the theme. So Sheila is, let's say, is linked by the word liken to the associate, which is her mother. This present is for you. So in this case, as you can see, it is just a preposition, and yet it functions as a predicate here. So this present is for you. So it is related to you in some form. So this present as a theme is linked to you as the associate, the one associated with the theme, and so on. Tom is with an. I guess the fossils. So I hope it's clear too. So as you can see, there is just some sort of causal relationship, like or for, or about that link between a theme, whatever is associated with that theme. Okay. Questions? A relational Predicate may indicate the relation of a theme and its associated and time. So we can also talk about relation is and time, for place something is and when something happens. And just look at it here. Remember the idea we have skipped what would normally be the predicate and with about link here. So north of, south of, in, on, near, behind. Here we're talking about place, and Canada is associated by the United States in this way. This one is north of, south of, in, on, behind. I hope it's here. And then when it comes to places, party on Saturday or will be on Saturday, and these prepositions normally link the associate to the theme of the sentence. Okay, this normally prepares you some type of sentence. So you will normally a sentence in which you will be you cannot really understand what type of relationship you have there. So that's how it normally goes. Okay. No questions?
Clear, Professor.
Yeah, thank you. Additional predicates may also express kinship and other social relations, like this one. Browns are the neighbors of the Greens. Julie is the daughter of Carol and Mr. Badcock, boss of me, and I am the employee of Darton and Sutton. So normally, this solves lots of problems. When you look at these sentences and you look at all the previous types of sentences, and you will find that we will all summarize them in this relationship: theme, link, associate, as simple as that. So the exceptions will be what we have seen before when we talked about affecting and affected and action and agent and actor and on. So those will be exceptions, while most sentences will be things like this. So you find one of those elements that we have seen before, you're going this way. If that's not it, start thinking of the theme and the link and the associates. Maybe that will be your solution. Okay, that's I will advise you to go around with that. Again, the same relationship goes. The term associate can in a very general way. It includes almost everything. So, for instance, we have theme, and it is this package weighs 5 kilos, and it costs, for instance, $20. So only if you think about it, it forms any kind of association, any kind of link between different types of words. In there is action and there is no affection, and so there is no question or identification. Okay. This package weighs 5 kilos. If you think about it, it doesn't really affect it in any way. Just thought this link between the two, the package and its weight. I think this is probably the last slide. So we'll talk about some changes in valency. Some verbs usually impose. We have seen some of it before today. So some verbs impose a certain number of arguments, while other verbs are more flexible. As we have before, so sometimes it is just an example of arguments, sometimes it is more. So Agnes wrote her mother letter. Normally we expect Y to have at least 2 arguments, and in this case they have given 3 arguments. What we can have Agnes just wrote. So she is a writer, so she used to write, for instance. If I say Agnes used to write, we have only 1 argument and 1 predicate, Agnes and write. So it can take argument and it can take 1. Same thing, we ate lunch, normally takes 2, so we eat something. But did you eat? Yes, we ate. So no, it can also take only one argument. Okay. Just like we use want and others must have to argument. So sometimes we can have this sort of flexibility, like the first examples, but sometimes we have some sort of necessity. The car needs a new battery. You cannot really the car needs and stop. You need to finish. You need to give us another argument. What does it need? And the same for use. I am using. You cannot just say. When it comes, there is an exception with you. I think when it comes to drugs specifically, they say he is using, and it means using drugs. But I think it's just some sort of euphemism. But normally it requires another argument. Certain predicates like bathe and dress are reflexive and self-directed, and this creates another problem sometimes. The actor and the affected the same argument. Look at this for instance. Maureen bathed the baby. In this case, what happens? How can we describe these elements? We can say that Maureen is the agent, and it has affected the baby by bathing it. So Maureen is the agent, and the baby is the one affected. In this case, how would you describe it? Let's remove herself. Herself is not there. We'll say Maureen bathed. How would you describe it?
She affected herself.
Yes, she affected herself by the action. So Maureen, as you have seen there, is the actor normally. So we'll not really call it the agent. It is affecting herself. So it is the actor and it is the affected at the same time. So this is one of the problems of the theory of valency and assigning arguments. Such predicates as choke and drown and suffocate are problematic. Why are they problematic, in your opinion? Let's see example. When we say Harvey drowned his mother-in-law, normally, yes.
Can I talk? It's different. It's problematic because it's not self-acted. No one can choke himself or drown himself or suffocate himself.
So, in a sense, if you think about it, people can do that. People can suffocate themselves. That's the famous committing suicide. So people can choke them maybe using a rope or something, but people do that. So when we say, for instance, Harvey drowned his mother-in-law, so he is the agent and he affected the mother-in-law. That's the easy way. When we say Harvey drowned, maybe he did it by himself, maybe he tried to commit that jumping somewhere and drowning, so he drowned himself, or maybe he drowned because someone did that to him and he drowned. It's similar to I will not it's not exactly the same, but it is similar to death. So when we say someone died, he was affected by death. So normally like drowned, he was affected by it. But if it was a suicide, sort of suicide, he did it to himself. It's like this one, these ones, like I would say, like I have shaved myself. To do that to yourself, in a sense. So we don't know in this case whether you did that to yourself or you went and were affected by someone else. In this case of drowning, Harvey is certainly the affected. He also the agent. That's the problem. Yes.
For example, if we say Harvey choked on a chicken bone, in this example, it's clearly an accident. So is he still the agent, or is he just the victim of an unpredicted event?
No, I'll tell you something. Maybe if I put the chicken bone in his food, hid it in his food, so that he would choke. That way, I am the one who caused the effect, and he is affected by it. Okay? So if you specify one who was affected, like we say, he drowned his mother-in-law, here you have solved the problem. Then Harvey is the agent and the mother-in-law is the one affected. But if you just specify the tool that was used, for instance, to drown him, maybe it will not be enough to show who did that exactly. So as we have said, it is a bit problematic. Can we say that he is just affected, like when we say, for instance, Harvey died, or can we say that he is also the agent? That's semantically ambiguous to some extent. Okay.
Professor?
Thank you, sir.
What? Thank you. Yes. Naima?
For example, if you have the example, he drinks a lot, we can understand it as he drinks alcohol a lot. So if we don't mean alcohol, so we should say he drinks or juice or something a lot.
Normally, to simplify things, a lot has nothing to do with the main proposition, I would say, to some extent. It will add some sort of effect, but for the main proposition, he and drink, these are the words that we have. To analyze he drink, we would say, how would we analyze he drink? That's the first thing we started with. So we have an actor and an action. Okay? So alcohol or all the time or those other elements will just confuse you. Try to remove them and keep the essential elements the way we are doing it here. Okay? I think it will make things clearer to you. Another problematic situation is this one. I rolled the ball down the street. So I am the agent and rolled is action, and the ball is the one affected by this. And we say the ball rolled down the street. So in this case, did someone roll it or did it roll by itself? And this is a bit confusing. Can balls do that by themselves and just go and start rolling? Normally, no. But it's not even clear whether someone, let's say, or is it some sort of passive form? So normally, it can be active, affected, and action. So it was affected by the action, or to some extent, it was affected by the event. So here, if it is an action, if we will see it as an action, we'll say that it is affected by, passive affected by the action, or we can say, as we said before, in the case of dying or falling, like for instance, when we said the cake fell, we can say that it is affected by an event. Okay, let's see if there is another exception. No, I think what we have is these elements. These are the main elements that you will have to remember, I think, for you to be able to perform that this kind of analysis. Now, do you have any questions before we move to? This is the last slide. This is the last thing I will have to say. Normally, I want to ask you a question. If you have no questions. No?
No, Professor.
Okay. So normally, I have. How do you feel about how this semester is going so far? Do you understand what we are doing in class?
Yes, Professor.
Okay.
Professor?
So if you understand, yes?
I do understand, but it is kind of too much. I mean, in one class we have like 2 hours focusing like a lot of information, but it's kind of, yeah, I could understand if you ask me.
So yes, go ahead.
To be honest, from the first in the first try, it's a little hard to keep up, with the new information input and processing what we have taken in the first few hours all at once. But after a few revisions, the picture does become clear with time.
Yes, normally. So all you need is to revise the basic elements. I think normally it will all make sense. You will see the relationship between the chapters, and you will see how they all build somehow build your ability to do semantic analysis in a complete way. We have started with content words, if you remember, and we have moved to grammatical words, and then we have moved to I'm just moving briefly, but trying to give you a general idea. So we have moved to said content words and grammatical words and how each one of these function. Then we have talked about social meaning, and then we have talked about expressive meaning. Besides descriptive meaning, that's the general meaning, that's the neutral meaning. So we have added social meaning, and we have discussed this. As I said, social meaning and some kind of, how do we call it? Expressive meaning. Expressive meaning, I'm sorry. And then we talked about sense relations and how words affect each other in a sentence. And now that's what we did before. And now we are talking about how each of the elements of the proposition acts normally to give us the meaning that we. The first question that we asked in semantics was, how do we make sense? And what we are doing here is understanding that, understanding the ways in which we make sense, the way is in which we understand. If you look at it from this perspective, I think you will see that we are still walking in the same direction. We are left with one week of semantics, 1 week of, let's say, one more course of semantics, which we'll talk about some kind of relations. We'll talk about entailment. We'll talk about different themes. I advise you again to read the chapter. We are going to a final section, but you will have to read the chapter first. That's one thing. I will send you an exercise. Or normally, I'll give you just one sentence. Okay? I will give you one sentence today, and I will ask you to do everything that we did before with sentences, as we did before. And we'll see how you are going to do that. Then next week we'll have our class. Then if you want, I will just receive whatever you send me and send individual feedback to students, or we can have an additional class just for the exercise, just to see how you are going to solve the problems that we will see now. I'll give you a couple of exercises, a mock exam. I will send it to you soon. It will be a mock exam. It will include even what we will see in the next chapter. Okay? So you go and you read the next chapter and you try to answer that too. You try to answer the whole mock exam. Okay? About semantics, only about semantics. Try to answer all the questions. I'll see how you are going to do there. See the difficulty that you are going to face. Then we will come back to this. To analyze the sentences, I will say this. To analyze the sentences, you will start with descriptive meaning. You will start with the content words, and you will move to description of grammatical words and how each one functions. Then what we have seen today about inflection will help you there. So this is the grammatical contribution of these elements, secondary element in the sentence. Try to see how each one there functions. Then it will be a great idea to even tell me whether those sentences are affecting, or anything like that. So you talk about that too, and you talk about relations if there is some kind of contradiction. If you see something related to social meaning, include that too. If you see something related to expressive meaning, you will have to include that. Okay? So include as many elements from what we have seen as possible. Then maybe we'll have another class just for the correction of that mock exam. Okay? I think
Yes,
that's
sir.
all I had to say.
So
I try to send it to you as soon as possible. Yes, yes, yes.
I am sorry to add this, but I couldn't to attend the class from the start, and I couldn't see the first two slides about preposition and how preposition connects with utterance.
What do you mean? Preposition and attribute?
The first
As we
two
have said, yes.
slides.
Yes.
I'm
Yes,
sorry,
we
but I
have simply
couldn't.
said that the preposition. We said that the preposition is mainly the general. Yes, yes. It is mainly the general idea. For instance, James and cat. So this is the proposition that we have. Three main elements of meaning: James, kill, and cat. We can express it using different sentences. You can say, for instance, James killed the cat, or the cat was killed by James, or James. Okay, let's just take these two examples. So James and killed and cat. Let's say the sentence James killed the cat. I can say it once, and you can say it too. So here we are talking about utterance. So there were two utterances of the same sentence. Okay, and the same that sentence is an expression of one preposition that we had before, which is James and kill and cat. And if you are going to describe the proposition itself, it will be an agent and let's say a predicate, which is kill, which is how do you call it? Agents, and then we have the affected. We call it
The effect.
The action.
I call it the action. I still call it the action normally. As we have said, this is how we describe the proposition. We move from it to the sentence, but sometimes you will look at that chart and you will see that sometimes it is not a complete sentence. For instance, we say that is part of what. So with that, James killed the cat. Here, syntactically, we still need to say more to make it a complete sentence. But semantically speaking, it is the same proposition. It still makes the same sentence. Okay. So it is only part of a sentence. It's not a complete sentence, but it is still one proposition. Okay.
Thank you. So, but if it's not too much to ask, can you show me the slides? I couldn't see them. Capture them.
Okay, you just want to see the slide. As you can see, I'm just taking elements from the book. I don't know why you would need.
Because the slides helps. The slides help show the information in a more understandable order instead of one giant paragraph.
Yes, instead of giant section. Okay, I think this is what we about sentence position. And this is, you have it in the book. This is what explains that. Okay.
Thank you so much. So.
Thank you. So have a nice day. And see you next.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Professor.
Yeah, thank you all very much. Yes.
Professor. Sorry, Professor. Can I ask you about the PFE? Professor.
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Professor, you demanded from us to send section 1. It is concerned with background about the topic and previous studies in the same field. Section 1.
Now I have asked you to start writing whatever you will start writing in the review fellowship. And to avoid letting you write the whole review, then telling you this is not how it should be written, I said, write just 1 or 2 pages and send them to me. I will give you feedback and I will tell you exactly this is what you should do and this is what you should avoid. Okay? How to include the references, how to, so things like that. So I just needed to see your first attempt at writing the review of literature. Okay?
Okay, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you. So.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.